Starting and running a business is hard, but you don't have to do it alone. Whether you're an established business owner or thinking about starting a side hustle to earn extra income, I am here to teach you how to show up as your unfiltered self, level up your business, and thrive as a mompreneur. Let's embrace the chaos and start enjoying the journey together. I'm Amy Traw, and you're listening to the Motivated Mompreneur Podcast. Welcome back into the Motivated Mompreneur Podcast. I am joined today by Deanna Wheeler, and the conversation we are going to have is one that we all need reminding of so often. So, Deanna, welcome into the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this chat.
Yes, it's a very important one because as we were chatting before we hit record, it's something that you and I both struggle with too. And we know this, we know it's important, but it's still something we have to work on every day. So before we get into that conversation, tell us a little bit more about yourself, who you are and what you do.
So I am a certified meditation teacher, which is the basis of all of my mindfulness practices. They began with that one step in my life. And I started practicing meditation after I found myself in a really high state of stress, which I think most of us are in a lot, but we don't necessarily recognize it and acknowledge it. And so I had hit a point where I was facing some things physically, because stress harbors itself in the body, that I knew I needed to make some changes or I would be in big trouble. And that's where meditation started for me, with that realization. And from there, I decided that once I experienced how powerful it was, I needed to help others with this practice in mind. So my mission now is to help stressed, overwhelmed women get off the sidelines of life and actually live in a way that they have joy and they have happiness in their days, because we just live in a space that's so overwhelming, and we can really be held back by so many things, and it's up to us to decide to make that change. So that's where I began. That's where I started with this practice and learning to teach. So
that is incredible, because it holds us back in so many ways. And we do just become, bystanders watching our life just fly by and not really being a part of it. Now, you mentioned a lot of times we don't even realize what a high state of stress that we're in. How can we become more aware that we're even in this state of stress?
So really being mindful, to me, is the practice of awareness. It's building that awareness into your days. And I was just talking about this the other day, about how you can do this anywhere. So if you're standing in line at the grocery store, you can kind of pause and say, am I feeling anxious and angry that this is taking too long and I want to just go, and my kids are upset and my cart is full and this is going to take forever? Or am I watching my surroundings and taking it in and maybe noticing a situation where somebody's helping somebody and that makes me smile? And really just building that in, sitting in your car in traffic. Am I stressed and my body is clenched and my knuckles are white, clenching the steering wheel? Or am I enjoying the song on the radio or having a conversation with my children? Like, it's having that built in, so that all day long we're kind of checking in with ourselves and saying, how am I feeling right now? And then we can notice those triggers, like those things that start to happen in our body when we're getting stressed. And I think most of us are under so much stress, we don't realize when it starts to accelerate and spiral out of control. And then we end up reacting in harsh ways, doing and saying things we probably wouldn't normally maybe do or say, like, slamming doors and yelling and
right, basically having a temper tantrum, like what our 3-year-old toddlers would do. You take that step back and notice, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm like throwing a tantrum.
100%. And creating that space in your mind to slow down and say, what's happening? How do I feel about it? And what can I change? Because we can't change anything if we don't recognize or realize that there is a problem to begin with. And that's what I mentioned about, like, I was under that stress for years before I was like, okay, something is wrong here. And I know that so many of us in the world, have those periods of time where it's just so much weighing on us and it takes its toll. It gets into all of our being, our muscles, our sleep patterns, our nutrition, like all of those things end up impacted when we are under stress. And so to really live a life that's meaningful and enjoyable, we have to learn how to manage it. Like if there was a magic wand for removing stress, everyone would buy it.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Like, sign me up.
So my magic wand is mindfulness and meditation. That's what
Nice.
I always say. Like we can have that tool and we can
Right.
build that into our lives so that we can navigate these things because they're going to happen.
Right. Well, that's just it. It's becoming aware is truly that first step to change. And I mean, that's true with anything in life, right? It's if we want a change, we have to do something different. And just having that awareness that we even have a problem, well, yeah, then you can start to make change. You can start to notice those little things that trigger you and create the space in your day. And circling back to what you said, it is up to us. It is a choice, but we have to intentionally be aware to make the choice to make the change. And that's
Mhm.
not always easy.
No,
Because,
it's much easier often to be miserable,
yeah,
um, even though we know what that's doing to us. Like
yeah,
we recognize, like, I am not happy right now. I am, whether it's physical or emotional things that are happening in your body, and my relationships are being affected, my health is being affected, and we know that, but it's a lot easier to ignore it and continue living the way we've lived than it
right.
is to recognize, start to make changes, and come out on the other side.
Exactly, because it's not always easy going through those changes. And I think that's a lot of times why people stay stuck in jobs that they hate for so many years is that you lose sight of your ability that you can make a change. You can make that choice. And it is up to us, but that's scary. That's really
It is.
scary because, we're sold something. It's like, okay, in life, you're supposed to do X, Y, and Z and check off all those boxes. And then we start to go through life on autopilot, which was something else we were talking about before we started recording today. What strategies do you have, or can you share with us to just start to wake up out of that autopilot mode? Because as moms, we're going through the day. We're so busy. We're trying to do our business tasks. We're trying to make sure the kids get on the bus. We're doing all of the things. How can moms incorporate this into their day?
So I think the biggest thing for me is to build that awareness. It all comes back to that. And so I would suggest a couple of pretty easy ways to start. And one would be to kind of time audit and see what you're doing in your day. Like, what are the tasks that you're completing each day? And then looking at that and deciding which things are priority and which things are maybe things that either you don't need to be doing or that could be delegated to someone else, right? Like um, moms and mompreneurs, especially, I feel like have a tendency to really just take the driver's seat and want, like, here's all the things we're going to do and we're going to do them. And it's just so draining when we have these big lists to do. And sometimes I feel like when we slow down, we can see some of the things we're doing that really don't have a purpose in our lives. Um, or maybe we have something on our list that just really isn't that fulfilling or rewarding, but we feel for some reason like we have to do it. Um, and digging into that. But the first place is to recognize, where are we spending our time? can it be done in a different way, and what can be removed? We can't remove laundry. I mean, but like you could hire somebody perhaps, but really you can't get rid of that task. And so, but what could you do to make it more enjoyable? Like listening to a podcast, listening to an audiobook, turning on music and making it exciting. We all have to eat. You're in the kitchen and you're making food and you're angry because maybe no one's helping or you have to do the dishes, or but how could you make that a more enjoyable process? Turning on some calming music, maybe spending that time alone with yourself, enjoying cooking. Or maybe it becomes a family event and everyone's in the kitchen having conversations and talking to each other. So I just suggest the time audit, look at what you're doing, where you're expending energy and time, and then how can you make some of those tasks more exciting and more fun and less mundane and like routine. That's, we just fall into these routines, and that's where things become autopilot. That's where we don't think about it, and we're just washing the dishes because we have to wash the dishes.
Right.
Like how can we make some of those things like so they make us smile, so they bring a
Yeah.
little bit of joy into our life. And it seems like, really, Deanna, that you want me to smile while I'm doing the dishes? Yes, because really, the more joy we can find in our days, the better. We have enough of it out here from the rest of the world. We need to take control and have as much that we can put in front of us to be happy every day.
Oh, so good. And I love the time audit strategy. I think that right there, if you take one thing away from this episode, do a time audit because it's really eye opening. We think that we don't have time in the day, but when you start to realize how many times are you picking up your phone any given day, and it's really intentionally slowing down that your eyes are opened to what's happening. And it's not easy to do because yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. As moms and mompreneurs, we do feel like we have to be in the driver's seat. We do feel like we have to have control over everything. And it's hard to ask for help and delegate. But even with some of the things around your house, like you said, making it fun and asking for help. I mean, one of the things I hate doing most in the world is packing lunches. So my kids are in first and third grade now. I'm like, well, we're going to try this. It's probably not going to go well, but hey, who knows until we try, right? So this year, I'm like, okay, you guys are going to start packing your own lunches. They're like, okay. And, some days it's an absolute disaster in the kitchen. But, now they're making their lunches by themselves. And it was a test that I told myself, like, oh, they're too young. They can't do that. It was a story I told myself. But, just asking for help and being like, hey, do you guys want to do this? And, I always double check because, being a first and a third grader, we could have like a lunch of like cookies and chips and, like no protein whatsoever. Like, what is this? But yeah, it really did start to take some of that overwhelm away and did give me back some time. I love that advice. Love it, love it, love it. And then just embracing our lives because life is short. And I think we forget. We forget that we're meant to live. Do you see that a lot? That you just have, a lot of your clients that just have forgotten that we're supposed to live.
We are very much, at least here, a society of to-do lists and a society of checklists and accomplishments.
Yeah.
And so we feel like if we're not doing those things, if we're not checking things off the list, if we're not accomplishing that expectation, whatever is supposed to be next for us in life, then we're not doing it right. And it's actually, in fact, the opposite. I feel like when we slow down, when we have those quiet times, those moments where we're checking in with ourselves, where we are incorporating fun and excitement into our days, everything else becomes so much easier. Those to-do lists become more manageable because we don't look at it with this frustration or this, almost like anger about having to do these tasks because they can't, like, it can feel just
Yeah.
so mundane and boring and like, I have to do this and I'd rather be doing this. Well, where can we make changes so that we can get through the things we absolutely have to, remove the things we don't need to do at all anyway, and then make more time for the things that we enjoy. And an example of this is like driving to school, maybe, or driving to work, and you take the same route and you don't think about it, and you know where the stop signs are, and you know that you're supposed to turn right. You don't slow down and go, oh, I need to turn my blinker on to turn right. Like, you just do it. And so when we live that way, where we're not slowing down to say, this is what is happening next, we can just go down these rabbit holes of things that aren't necessary. They're not needed in our lives. Um, so if you think about life like that, where if you slow down and you start to notice what's going on around you, and you start to see things you didn't see before, you notice things with your children or your partner, or coworkers that you didn't see before because you were so in this tunnel vision of checking things off the list. Um, it's pretty it's pretty amazing. Like when you stop and just take in the world around you, like I said, at the grocery store, seeing somebody help another person get something off the shelf or lift a heavy bag, or like, that makes you smile because we are so surrounded by negativity that it's so easy to focus on all the bad things, that when we start to see all those little good things that we're missing day to day, like the feeling is, you can't describe it. You just start to feel this happiness and this joy. And the more you do that, the more people around you are going to do that, right? Like that's
Yeah.
what we do, kind of ripples into everyone around us.
Sure, it's contagious. I mean, you think about it, if you're in a bad mood, then your kids start to be in a bad mood, and then your partner starts to be in a bad it's just this whole like, yeah, this ripple effect. And isn't it true that we are wired for negativity? Like that's just a primal survival mechanism.
It's easy to see where we might be in danger or threatened. And like that's what the brain was made for, right?
Yeah.
Was to protect us. And so it's always looking for those things like, oh, be on the lookout, be on the watch. I might need to step in and activate the survival, like you said, the fight or flight. That's so our brain subconsciously is constantly looking for these threatening situations, and that usually is a result of negativity and
Yeah.
stress.
Yeah.
Like that's how we process it. And so the more we can find, and it goes, we know like what you surround yourself with grows, what you focus on grows. And so it's nothing new for me to say that when you start to focus on positive feelings, you will start to feel more positive overall. You'll have a different energy about life. You'll have a different energy about your day and different situations that maybe would have sent you over the edge previously.
Yeah, it's so important to remember that because it's something we all forget. We just forget to do it because our brains aren't wired that way. But we can start to incorporate these things through mindfulness, which doesn't have to take us a whole lot of time and energy. It's just simply being present, simply noticing one thing that's going on. And yeah, you can rewire your brain. It's been proven in research. It's
It
incredible.
it is, and it's like, what? I have the
Right.
power to like
Yeah.
change and this thing in my body and how it works, and we
Right.
do. It takes practice and effort and
Sure.
consistent, daily action to do it. Um, but it can happen. It can happen where we start to respond to things differently, and we're more thoughtful about it, and we're more kind and compassionate, versus short-tempered and impatient, right?
Yeah.
Like those are things I know that everyone, myself included, is like really not nice, right? Like I was impatient, I was mad, I was frustrated, and I took it out on someone else. Um, and so if we can slow down and create more space in our lives to be intentional and thoughtful about how we're handling things, it feels amazing.
And what an
because
impact. Yeah.
yeah, it just, we've all heard the story about the cashier getting yelled at, because somebody was having a bad day. And then maybe in a different scenario, the cashier was upset and someone came up and said, I'm sorry. Like, I hope your day goes better. Like, these are things that we, through being mindful, through having this place of intention in our actions, we can impact other people and how they're perceiving their lives and their days. we
Love
can
it.
we can help them or we can hurt them. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. And that all comes from action and awareness.
Yeah. And just intention in those actions, like you just
Mm-hmm.
said, is truly the key to creating a better world, for our children, for ourselves, because we're not in this world alone. And we can create positive changes by starting with ourselves, by just noticing and being present and participating in our lives. This was a fabulous conversation and the perfect reminder for all of us. Where can we find you and learn more?
So Facebook and Instagram both are Deanna Wheeler. Pretty easy to find me in the profile. Everything is matching and consistent. So if you find me in one place, you can find me in the other. My website is deannawheeler.life. And that is for a reason, because life is precious. We take it for granted. And my mission is to help as many people find that joy and happiness as possible. Um, and that's probably the easiest way to connect with me at this point in time. I just want to share one little parting thought, and that is to take time to pause, take time to take a few deep breaths and just slow what's happening in life and really try to find space to enjoy it, because it's meant to be lived, meant
Yeah.
to be lived. And when we're living, we're enjoying it and we're happy and we have purpose. And that can have a ripple effect around the world. So I hope that is helpful. I hope that serves you and gives you some space to practice mindfulness.
Yes, truly, your mission is incredible and so needed in this world. So, thank you. Thank you for being out there and spreading that message, because it is truly important and needed. So, thank you so much. Until next time, stop dreaming and start taking messy action. You've got this. Are you loving what you're hearing? Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode.